Hi, I'm AP and I'm just a girl who likes to talk about movies, books, and TV shows. So if you're into that, please stick around. I've been thinking about this a lot. So there's a couple of reasons why I'm not into dystopian fiction. For those who don't know, dystopian fiction is a subgenre of science fiction, and I am not a huge fan of science fiction. It hurts me, it hurts my head, okay? Like, I just look too deeply into it. I don't understand why, but like, because science fiction is evidence-based and it has to, like, everything in the show has to like make sense, or everything has to be explainable, I'll start looking too deeply into it and being like, that doesn't make sense, like logistically this doesn't make any sense. And so like I overanalyze it and it just doesn't become enjoyable for me. I think for some people that is, but for me it's like I want to be able to turn my brain off when I'm watching a show. When I'm watching fantasy or reading fantasy, it doesn't really take much to be like, okay, this person's fighting a dragon, versus like this person is solving the equation to life, and I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore.
I'm out of here.
I kind of classify dystopian fiction as a high science fiction. There's levels to this thing, again, different video, but it's only higher end because it's transporting you to a different world. Usually it's like a post-apocalyptic world, or like some big revolutionary wave in tech happened and almost destroyed the planet, or something drastic has happened that the world has structurally changed. And again, that's where you lose me. And it's not so much like a, oh my god, I hate this show, or like, oh, I can't stand it. It's more of like, I want to be here, I don't want to watch this, I'm good. Like one or two shows that I can think of that are science fiction that I'm like, oh, I love this show, and that's Resident Alien, which I plan to make a video on that because I love that show. And Expansion, which is another show that I only started watching because my mom got me into it. Like, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have turned it on, and the only reason I finished it is because I needed to know what happened. Okay, low-key, I got into it because of like the couple. I just wanted to see if they ended up together. That was the only point. Like, if they didn't, I wouldn't have finished the show, but I digress, right? So besides those two, not even Theo James himself could get me interested in this genre.
Are you kidding?
For the longest time, it bothered me as to why I wasn't into it, because it's like, it takes a level of disbelief similar to fantasy to get into dystopia, like it's a different world. But there was something about it, because a part of me was like, oh, I'm just disinterested in it, like I just don't like it. But that wasn't it. Like, I don't know about you guys, I'm gonna give some personal details about myself. I don't really know how I feel about something at the moment. It takes me time to like kind of dissect why I'm feeling a certain way, and it kind of bothers me until I figure out why. Why can't I get into dystopian fiction? What is it about it that is like again, it's like an automatic like no. I happened to be one day scrolling my For You page and I stumbled upon this author who happened to be writing a science fiction book, and she was talking about her process of like how she's building and developing the world. And I thought it was interesting because as a person who would like to be a writer someday, I wanted to know like what her process was, what her story was about, because like even though I'm not interested in it, I like to learn from different creatives of how their process works, and maybe I can apply it to myself, but I digress. And so she's talking whatever, she's saying that the reason why her book is taking her so long to write is because she has to do a lot of research on historical events that have happened. And if you're not catching my drifts, she's pulling inspiration from transatlantic slavery basically, and the systemic physical oppression that Black and brown and indigenous people had faced within the United States, because she wants to apply that to help build the world that her characters are in, because they're going to be in a similar situation. And that was the moment I realized why I don't like dystopian fiction, or in fact the main reason why I didn't. It kind of like it was an aha moment. The reason why I don't like dystopian fiction is because dystopian fiction makes me uncomfortable. Dystopian fiction makes me uncomfortable because it uses Black and POC's trauma as a plot device, without having Black RPOCs within the story. So you're pulling sympathy from our past, our past and present trauma or experiences with a predominantly white cast. That to me just doesn't sit right. Before I go any further, I want to make it clear, I'm not saying anyone who reads dystopian fiction or anyone who writes it or anyone who pulls from these events are racist. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that it is a mind-blowing thought that people can pull from our history or these traumatic events that happen within our culture and understand that it was wrong and that it was traumatizing, and package it with a pale-skinned person, whether male or female, and everyone can gather and gain sympathy for that character, right? But you're not going to include the people who that actually happened to, because you're pulling from actual historical and or current events that has happened within these communities. And for you not to even think of like, oh, maybe I should include, you know, the people that I'm pulling from, I don't know about you, but it doesn't sit right. Almost like a whitewashing of our experiences. The reason why I bring this point up is because I kind of wanted to see if I was the only person who felt that way. Like, my main goal for this channel is to create a space in particular for Black girls who are into, like, you know, these different forms of media, to kind of have the space to have these conversations, because a lot of places are not fun to. Anyway, this is the same feeling how I get when I'm watching Black trauma films, where you have these films that are centered around Black stories, but you're only seeing the extreme brutalization of Black and brown bodies. The same feeling I get from watching those movies is the same feeling I get from dystopian fiction. A lot of the times we don't get to see the triumphant person win at the end of the day, right? And that's the part that drives me crazy, because like, as much as I struggle with Black trauma films, at least it is telling our stories and we're in it and we're including it and it's showing our triumphs and our tribulations, all of that. But with dystopian fiction, it basically erases all of that, because let's be honest, let's just have a real talk here. If we were living in a dystopian society that was judging people purely based off how they look, how they were, class, Black and brown people would be the ones affected the most. And so to see an author, again, pull from do all of this research, you're doing all of this research within these historical events and learning of the systemic oppression and the Black trauma and all of that stuff that we've gone through, but then basically be like, but I'm going to ignore all of that because there was a specific reason why Black people were chosen and went through the history, especially within America, we've gone through, right? So for you to ignore that massive part of it, and then to basically, because we're in a lot of those dystopian fiction books, we're non-existent in it. We don't exist for the most part. It hasn't been until recently. And for you to basically gloss over that, or again erase that, that's troublesome, because you're missing the fundamental roots of why that happened in the first place. It's a massive struggle, because especially in the current climate that we live in, where it's almost like an eraser of everything that Black people have worked towards in the last hundreds of years, and our history is always constantly being diminished and pushed aside. So for you to come online and to say, oh, I'm gonna do all this research and I'm doing this, and your book does not include a single Black person, or we're just reduced to a side character who pops in every so often, and you're reading this book about these people being in an oppressive state, and that person happens to be a conventionally attractive white person, it's a jarring feeling, especially because you could see the people, a specific demographic of readers, who can gather the sympathy and the understanding and understand the horror of what everyone is going through within the society, and understand that it is so wrong for this to happen, but in the same breath also dismiss whenever a Black person comes on the line and says, hello, this is problematic. It's crazy the amount of times that I've gone online or whatever and I've seen people be like, oh my god, I can't believe that people are like this and that this can happen. But it's like you're sitting there and be like, it has happened, it still is happening. We still, these, like, you might not hear about it, but these practices are still happening to Black and brown people. Science fiction is based in reality. It's based on facts. It's based on stuff that could possibly happen, right? That's kind of the difference between science fiction and fantasy. Whereas fantasy, it could be a world somewhere far, far away, and no one, like, there doesn't have to be any grasp of reality within it. But with science fiction, it has to be based on this could possibly happen, right? So there is that level of reality. And again, if you're pulling from actual events that are happening within the world, and let's be honest, we haven't really addressed a lot of the stuff that has happened within our history, and we just started getting to that point. I don't know what it's going to look like in the next few years, but
we have some breaking news right now, breaking news.
So yeah, that's why I'm not into dystopian fiction. And it's a personal feeling that is stopping me from diving into it. Like I said, it's something that I've recently discovered and figured it out, so I am doing a bit more research into it. And I know that there are some stories that are a little bit different from this, but a lot of them fall into this kind of, like, you know, category. I know I want to make it clear that I acknowledge not every single author out there is doing this particular thing, and not every single book is like that, and I'm still forming my opinion on it, like still crafting my thoughts around it, because I recently discovered that this is the uncomfortability that I have with it, and it's going to take me a bit of time to, like, fully craft that opinion. As a Black woman, as a Black person, my experience and a lot of the things, I don't have certain privileges within this world, is like there's certain things that I am not allowed to escape from. And I think white people are very much, and white authors and white consumer medias, you're allowed to create any form of media and escapism, where I am not allowed that privilege. The Hunger Games, for instance, yeah, that actually happened to Black people. That's not just like something that, like, it's fiction, because that actually happened to us. There were slaves who fought each other to the death for entertainment. Even outside of slavery, there were Black people who were put up against each other for entertainment, for a white audience to consume, and to, like, for the wealthy and upper elites to consume, watch, and gawk at. So watching those types of, and again, I ain't hating on Hunger Games. Please do not think I'm sitting here telling you not to watch the Hunger Games. That is not what I'm here for. But what I am saying is that that's a part of my people's history. Yeah, it's traumatizing to go and watch it and basically see this erasure of Black people in it. Again, that it's not that escape. I don't have that privilege of having that escapism. It's easier for that specific demographic to see it and label it as fiction, or to create the heroes and to create the villains and be like, okay, I'm done, wash your hands of it, because to them, they cannot fathom that idea of that happening, because they've never had to sit down with their parents or their aunts or their grandparents. I don't know if y'all ever seen Roots, but, like, ever had your parents sit you down in front of the TV and strap you to the chair and force you to watch those type of things about your history, like, and knowing that, oh, that actually happened, knowing that, oh, that's not too far ahead, knowing that my grandparents were alive during, my great grandparents, like, it's not that far away. So it's like, it's just not escapism. And again, it's just disheartening for white authors in particular to write these stories and not include us at all, to not even acknowledge that, because there's so much empathy and sympathy that could be created if you just include us within those stories. Like, there's so many waves that could be made within dystopian fiction if those authors, and the ones in particular that are pulling from historical events that have happened to, again, Black people and POCs, and just, again, not making them the main character in the story, but just having them highlighted in it somewhere, the amount of waves and the amount of cultural impact that you would have if you just simply add the people whose history that you're taking from, it would be revolutionary.